I'm going to teach you guys how to make an absurd amount of money during Q4. There's a short list of things that I like more than Q4 marketing. It's got to be God, family, my wife, sex, working out, and my kids. Not particular order, but there's very few things that I like. Q4 is one of the things that I'm obsessed about because it's the one time a year that brands have so much buying opportunity from their customers to make an obscene amount of money and profit. And there's one thing I've noticed over the last 8 years doing this. The brands that have an outlier success period of Q4, it typically sets the stage for them to have a very successful next year. But the brands that don't have a great Q4, called Black Friday or October or December and November, they typically struggle for that next year. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because if you really get this right and you really crush it this Q4, you will set yourself up for a much better year, because that trend tends to continue. Brands that are up and have a lot of money year over year will tend to continue that trend. So there's a few strategies and things that you need to be doing this Q4 if you want to be one of those brands, and you want to be one of those brands that has outlier success. All right, so let's do this. So these strategies are really a matter of things you need to prepare right now, because if you don't start right now, you're not going to have enough time to do this well and to do it justice. So what are these strategies? So the first one is going to be the strategy of cohorts. Now, if you watch me any amount of time, you know how obsessive I get about data and about cohorts. Customer cohorts essentially just tracks the repeat purchase rate of people who buy from you for the first time. And why this is so powerful is because I'm going to show you and I'm going to prove to you that if you start right now, you can use this to your advantage to increase the likelihood of you having a really great year or a really great Q4. So for example, this is a real brand, by the way, real brand last year. This is their customer cohort. So how you read a cohort, by the way, if you've never seen me explain it before, is a cohort shows the month right here. It shows the month that someone bought something right here. So this is July 2024. That we had 613 new customers. So what that means is month 0 essentially is from day 0 to day 31. That's month 0 right there. So that means of the 613 new customers, 7.3% of those people bought again between days 0 and 31. So that means they bought in between the next 30 days, 7% of those people ended up buying again. Month 1 is days 31 to 60. So it's actually going to be 60, it's 30 right there. Okay, that's month 2. So what this means is of the 613 new customers who bought in July 2024, 13% of them bought between days 31 and 60. So it shows the repeat buying patterns of the new people that I buy. When do I typically experience them buying again from me? That's a big jump. Only 7% bought again in those days, but 13% jumped again between days 31 and 60. That's huge. Now, why this is important is because what we're doing is I'm going to show it to you that if you do what I'm about to show you, you can increase your chances of having a better Q4 by 40%. This is a real brand. And this brand, for example, this was their Q4 right here. So in November 2024, they had 2,500 new customers. That was just new. So it was actually 2,500 new, 2,100 returning. Because remember, this just shows new customers and their patterns. It doesn't include the returning customers. Now, what's really interesting is if you look in November, a cohort you can read this way. So you can read it this way, right? So I showed July, how many people bought again in month 0, month 1. This will be month 2 would be days 60 to 90, and so on and so forth. So you can read it this way, right? You can also do a cohort diagonally this way. So let me walk you through how this looks. So November 2024, this is the new right here. What about the returning? Well, this is the returning right here. Is you had of the 2,500 new customers, what about the returning? Well, we had 11% of people who bought in November bought again before the month was up. So that's part of this returning number right here. But also we had 15% of the people who bought in October, 15% bought, which accounted for that returning. And then in September 2024, of the 700 new customers, 12% of them ended up buying in November, because this looks like this. October 2024, this line, month 1 is 15%. That means they bought in November. And September, month 2 means it's November 2024. August, month 4 means it's November 2024. So you see diagonally, it's showing the relationship of the people who ended up buying again in November who are new customers only in those months. Does that make sense? So why this is important is because we had a big part of our Black Friday success, in fact, over half of our revenue was from returning customers, and it was from the people who bought in the 4 months before Black Friday. Hopefully you see where this is going. So take a look at this. In July 2024, 36 of those people who bought for the first time in July bought in November. In August, 123 of these people bought in November. September, 98. October, 192. November, 282. So what that means is over 731 returning customers that bought during Black Friday were actually brand new in the 4 months before that. So you take this brand and you multiply it by their average order value, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the strategy you need to be thinking about is, number one, what can I do to increase my new customers between now and Black Friday? That is the number one thing you should be focusing on. What can I do to increase that? So here's another brand. I'm going to paint this picture. What we did is we launched an irresistible acquisition offer. So for example, and I'm going to use this acronym, irresistible acquisition offer. That's what we abbreviate as. What we'll do is we will create an ad. And that ad between now and Black Friday, the whole point of it is to increase new customer acquisition. That's it. That's its sole job. So for example, we may do like a 2 for $79 offer. Now, we don't do the entire store. We just pick one product line, not the entire store, to ramp this up. Or that's a BOGO, buy one, get one. Or that can be a buy two, get a free gift. Like there's many different permutations you can run with this. And I actually have a whole list of ideas of things that we've used in the past. And if you want that, let me know. And so what we did, and this is a real brand, by the way, last year, as you can see this year. So from January all the way leading up to November, what happened? You see this new customers? What's happening? It's getting bigger because this brand, we had a really big target. We had to hit a certain amount of revenue during a massive product launch, and we had to have a really big Black Friday. So the only way to do that is we knew, based off returning customer patterns, how many new customers we needed and how many returning customers we could expect to acquire. So what happened was, as you can see right here, of the people who bought during this product launch, and by the way, we launched this product on July 15th, okay? July 15th, massive spike. But what's crazy is you see all these cohorts of the people. So June 2024, 600 of that 7,000 bought during this period, and then 3, and then whatever. This right here, just this and this and this and this, accounted for over 30% of all their returning customers who bought during that product drop. And it was almost $400,000. So the point you need to be thinking about is, what's the revenue? So number one, what's my goal? What is the amount of revenue I want to hit in November? Because once you know that, you can reverse engineer. Okay, based off my customer cohort, how many returning customers can I expect? Because look, you see this up here, especially if you're on Shopify, this is the average. That's the average of all these months. So you could actually reverse engineer, okay, based off these repeat buying patterns for the next X number of months until Black Friday, how many returning customers can I expect? And that difference has to be the new customers you acquire during that month. And so we do this to hit $1 million months in Black Friday, November, because once we have this, it makes it very easy to forecast what that goal is. So number one, you have got to look at your cohort, come up with your goal, then reverse engineer what is the amount of new and returning customers I need to hit that target. Now, to do that is step number 2. I like to call this the forecasting audience cake. People call it different things over the years, so I'll let you pick and choose which one you want to use. But this is what we use to mainly leverage how do we want to acquire these customers and what kind of customers do we want. For example, every brand on the planet has these 3 layers of the forecasting cake. Okay, you have owned audiences who are your customers, own audiences who are your non-customers, and you have paid audiences. Very simple. Own audiences, it means they've customers who have bought in the past. You have them on their email list, on your SMS list, on your push notification list. You have their address so you can send them postcards, right? Or maybe you have them inside of a group. So for example, if you want to have like a group, you can do that too, right? So that's a very easy way to reach those people. Then you have own audiences who are non-customers. And those are people you have on your email list and SMS or you're in your groups that maybe they're not customers yet, but for the most part, you still own that list or you own that placement or that position on the search engine results page, right? That's one. The other part is the paid audiences. And those are essentially, as it sounds, the platforms you have to pay to play. It means you have to pay money to get in front of people to advertise on that, right? You can still do well organically, and we'll consider that owned audiences, not customers, but to really scale it up, you got to pay to play. Why this is really important when it comes to forecasting for Q4 is because the higher you go up the forecasting cake, the lower the conversion rate is. There's a reason why I can send a really great email offer to a customer list on email, and I'll have an insanely high conversion rate and a lot of profit. Or same thing for SMS, print or push, because they're already customers. But the problem is there's less scalability. But the higher you go up the audience cake, the more it costs, whether that's time or money to get in front of those people. For example, paid audiences, yes, could I scale that? For sure. But own audiences and customers, some of our brands, when we send an email, they'll make $30,000 to $50,000 because we worked towards this goal over the last 12 months, but they'll make 50 grand from an email. Why is that? Well, because we've been acquiring customers for so long. So it's almost like pennies on the dollar to send an email to them, right? Whereas paid audiences, you have to pay to make $50,000 from acquisition. And that's not counting the profit, okay? But also the higher you go up the forecasting cake, there's more volatility. If you're watching this video and you're running any kind of advertising, I think we all know the pains of some days Meta, TikTok, Google just doesn't perform very well. It's quite volatile. It may be good for a couple months, then it goes down, right? It's like always up and down. Whereas an email like SMS, it's like pretty much consistent, right? But the downside is I almost have infinite scale, nearly infinite in this hypothesis, infinite scale unpaid, right? Whereas own audiences, I can only squeeze so much money in revenue from my list. I just can't. Like there's a finite amount of money I can squeeze from that list. Whereas paid, I can always spend more money to get in front of more people. So those are the pros and cons. But why I'm bringing this up is because once you understand the audience cake, that determines, okay, now what is the amount of goal and profit I want from Q4? For example, if your goal, I'm gonna use a rounded number because that's easy. If your goal is to make $1 million November, and we've done that for 22 other brands, is to make $1 million November. The question you should be asking yourself is, okay, of that $1 million, do I wanna make 100 grand in profit? Do I wanna make 200 grand in profit? Do I wanna make 300 grand in profit? And why this is important is because it determines and dictates what part of the audience cake you need to build between now and Black Friday. For example, this is why it all links together. Remember this example? Half of the customers who bought in November were returning. Oh, sorry, maybe like 40%. 60% were new. Okay, so if my goal is to make, I want to make a lot of profit in November, then I may need to focus more on this part of the forecasting cake. Maybe I need to focus more on this part. Maybe I need to spend more time, more effort scaling up my new customer acquisition, like right here, running an irresistible acquisition offer, whose sole goal is to fatten the returning customer section right here to make it bigger so that when I launch my offer, I have more customers who will get that offer and who will buy. Because remember, I told you guys, there's a big chance that many of those customers leading up from the previous months are going to buy again, right? It can be up to 1/3 to 40% of those people. But let's say, for example, I want to make profit, but I care more about just hitting a gross revenue milestone. Okay, cool. Then maybe you want to focus on how do I increase the amount of people on my list who are non-customers so that then I can still make some money. Or maybe you've only been in business for a year, you don't have a big customer list, and the likelihood of you filling that's going to be quite low. Then maybe you just have to survive and pay to play. But I'm showing this to you because every brand that we've done $1 million in a month, some of them also during Black Friday, this is how we think, is once we understand what the goal is, and we understand, okay, how many new and returning customers do we need based off the cohort? Then we ask, okay, what's the goal and the profit number we would love to hit? And that exactly tells us how many own audiences and customers we need to acquire, how many own audiences, non-customers we need to have on the list. And then that difference is here's how much we're going to have to spend in November just to acquire this amount of new people right there. This is the difference between having insane success during Black Friday versus not having success. And that's why, for me and my team, I can only speak to us personally, we stress heavily forecasting and planning because we want to know exactly how many returning customers do we need on this list to guarantee hitting that revenue target. And then how much ad spend do we need to spend in November to guarantee hitting that revenue target? All right, so I mentioned this previously. Here's a really good starter list for you guys. You can take a screenshot of this. This isn't every possible example in the world, but I like to use this list personally because it gets the creative juices flowing. Every single one of these are proven irresistible acquisition offers. Many of them have done millions of dollars behind this list right here. So use it just to get the creative juices flowing. At the end of the day, make sure it matches your margins and it matches your goal and objective. But just a few things I want to remind yourself. Number one, don't do the whole store. Don't do that. Because if you do the whole store, what's going to happen is your offer for Black Friday is not going to look appetizing. What you want to do is just do one product line or product. Again, I don't know what your guys' products are, but for example, like for our fashion brands, they typically have different lines. We'll say, hey, just pick one product line. Let's make an acquisition offer just on that. So it's just one thing. It's tight so that when we launch a Black Friday offer and Black Friday, we can do the entire store, for example. Okay. So just whatever that is, just make sure you think through that. Okay. So make sure you do those two things. It's really important. Next thing is this is where I think most people just really screw up when they're running an acquisition offer. Just real quick. A lot of people, when I tell them to do this, and I've literally talked to over 300 brands in the last 7 years. Many of these strategies, many of the people, I'm not going to say who on that list are actually brands we ran acquisition offers for. But I want to be very clear when I say something is when I tell this strategy to brands, what I often get as a pushback for people who don't know better is, oh, but that sounds terrible. I'm not going to make any money off that. Or am I discounting my brand or my brand equity or whatever? At the end of the day, people vote with their dollars what they think of your brand, they think of your ads, what they think of your offers. But the important part is acquisition offers are actually wildly, wildly profitable if you do them right. And I'm going to share just one strategy. There's many others. I'm going to share with you one strategy that if you do this thing, it will guarantee your acquisition offer makes you an insane amount of money. Because what people think when I tell them about acquisition offers, they think it's just, they do the math and like, oh, but those margins look terrible. I can't run ads and make this work. You can, I'll prove it to you. Here's a strategy. Number one is first thing you want to do, yes, do the math, guys. Do the math. All right, do the math. So for example, I have an example right here of a real brand. Here's their products. They sell hats and hoodies. Here's their retail price. Here's their cost of goods, their pick and pack, and their gateway processing fees and their shipping costs, okay? And it comes out to be like this. After all the costs are taken out, and if you do free shipping, here is their gross margins right here. So for example, hoodie without a discount is 68% gross profit, with $40 gross profit. A buy one hoodie, get one free BOGO is $28 gross profit, 47% gross profit, and so on and so forth. That's not the important part. What people fail to understand, and this is what's important that you should set this up in Shopify, they fail to understand that when it's a good acquisition offer, there's going to be a percentage of people, let's call it probably 10 to 15% based off what I've seen, of people will buy more than one. So if you're running a BOGO, there's going to be a small percentage of people who will buy more than just one. They'll buy two, they'll buy three. And if you set this up right as an upsell or cross-sell, you can make wild money from it. For example, if you take those exact same numbers and you upsell just one more and give an additional 30% off. So it's not just upselling one more. You're saying, hey, here's one more and I'll give you an additional 30% off. Your gross profit from that order jumps from $40 to $69, from 28 to 47. And you don't have to be that aggressive. I'm just giving you a very aggressive example to prove to you guys there's a lot of money to be made, okay? And then while they're there, you say, hey, while you're at it, do you just want to add an additional second pair here? If you upsell two more at the exact same 30% off, goes from $40 to 97 gross profit, from 28 to 69. But if you can upsell three more, and this is completely within your realm of control, that profit goes from 40 to 126, from 28 to 87. Why is this important? Because there's going to be a percentage of people who will take advantage of this. 10 to 15% of people, if you do this right. You could actually make an insane amount of profit from this deal, especially if you order those in the right way and you have the right kind of copy on it. I see this work best for brands that have additional variants on their SKUs. For example, if you're only selling literally like one pair of glasses and you don't have any other extra variants, it's not going to work. But if you're selling these glasses, but you've got them in 10 different colors, maybe 3 different lenses, that's perfect, because people like to have extras of things, especially if they want to change the flavor, they want to change the style. If you give them the option, there's a percentage of people who will take advantage of that. And this strategy right here is why when we run acquisition offers for our brands, and there's a whole strategy behind it. Like we go deep in the strategy, we forecast it. We also do a strategy where we get customer feedback as well. And there's a whole bunch of strategies that are involved with that. But once we're done with that, that is why our acquisition offers can be wildly profitable, because it's not just a one-time sale. We get people to buy more than one. And if you do these things, you will make an absurd amount of money during Black Friday. And I'm telling you, if you do that, it's going to make your year. So let's do a quick recap. The quick recap is, what levers do you have? Okay. What levers do you have to have an insane Black Friday? So for example, what I would do is number one, run an irresistible acquisition offer between now and Black Friday. You've got to freaking do it because you want to increase the amount of customers you have on hand. So when you launch the Black Friday offer, you have more returning customers. I already showed you that strategy. Number two, come up with your goal. Okay. Remember, I talked about your goal, and because once you do that, you're going to want to forecast it so you know exactly how many new and returning customers you need. Number three, then you want to plan out what is my inventory needs. Because if you're going to run an irresistible acquisition offer, a really great deal in November, you want to understand like how much inventory do you need? And then in terms of what levers of control do I have to increase my Black Friday, it's going to be the following. So I'm going to call this what to focus on. Number one, you're creative. Okay. I didn't talk about it on this video, but creative, especially acquisition offer. If your acquisition offer is not working, it's either one of two things. It's either your creative sucks, or number two, your offer isn't clear or appetizing. Okay. Number three is going to be your offer. Number three is going to be your landing page. We'll create landing pages specifically for this time period. Number four, create the upsells. Remember, I showed you the power of getting more than one person to upgrade on that product. Make sure you do that. And the last one is going to be getting that AOV up, which also helps with the upsells. Right? Those are interdependent. Okay. If you do these things, you will with 100% certainty have an amazing Q4, Black Friday, call it Q5, which is like January time. This will crush because we have done this for 300 brands, and every brand that takes this advice and we execute it with them, they always have a breakout Black Friday period every single time. Those are the strategies that will guarantee you guys crushing this Q4. If you have any questions on some of these, ask me in the comments. Specifically, if you guys need help prepping for Black Friday, you can also schedule a call with me. I love talking about this stuff, but specifically, now is the time to start because if you do the right actions, you will get the right outcomes. See you next time.